want to hear this. You like it's kind of like a weekend, but we do charity events, and there's an event that night that's really big. It's like a football game. You were like, yes, perfect weekend for a snowstorm. Did you get to go wherever you were going?
We went, and it's just that cold weather followed us wherever we went. But it was still nice. It was good. Yeah.
Like a little course jump sometimes. You go back and like reread some of these chapters.
She said all of it will come off.
Well, when you do start.
Yes, I can stop it.
That's right. Enjoy yourself no matter what.
Alright. So you all made it out in the cold to come see me again today, right? Yes, we did. Yes! I love it that you love me. Okay, you guys have your quizzes out from Herbaceous? Okay. And has everybody kind of been using the website, getting caught up? If you missed questions or whatever, get back on the website, checking on the answers. Fabulous. Okay, so question 1 is, what are the 2 key environmental factors to consider when locating or planting a flower planting? And it's light level and soil drainage. Number 2, the answers are color of the flowers and foliage. Number 3 is 1 to 2 pounds actual nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. 1 to 2 pounds actual nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. Number 4, too deep mulching can promote stem and crown rot. Number 5, seeds are...
Repeat 4.
4, too deep mulching can promote stem or crown rot. Okay. Number 5, seeds are cheaper and present at wider selection of cultivars. I would probably present a wider selection of, I think Richard typed wrong. That's what he did. But they're cheaper and you get a bigger selection of cultivars. Number 6, use light potting mix in seed furrow or cover with vermiculite or mulch.
Say it again.
Use light potting mix, and he put that in parentheses, in seed furrow or cover with vermiculite vermiculite, or mulch?
Nobody else will.
Number 7, you are looking for continued bloom by preventing seed formation and improved aesthetic quality of the plant. So that's why you're deadheading. You're preventing the seed formation and you're improving the aesthetic quality of the plant.
Or appearance of continued flower.
Yep, appearance would be aesthetics or continued flower. Yep. Okay. Yep. Number 8 is 6.0 to 7.0. Number 9, it helps minimize disease and insect carryover to the next season. Okay. Number 10, moist chilling to overcome internal dormancy.
Say it again.
Moist chilling to overcome internal dormancy. That's stratifying a seed. You're trying to break its dormancy. Chilling it. Okay. Number,
Can I-
yeah,
If, like I answered moist chilling,
yeah.
is that okay, or do you have to have that whole explanation?
No, moist chilling, you defined, you probably just need to know that it was to break the dormancy. So to why you'd stratify a seed is to break dormancy. Number 11, season or period of bloom. Number 12, aphids, thrips, mites. Number 13, rogue out the infected plant and destroyed it. So he was trying to get fancy. Remove the plant, remove the infected plant. He was trying to take out the infected plant and destroy it. Don't put it in the compost, but destroy it. Okay. Number 14. Okay, so we're talking about tender bulbs here. One which is not tolerant of Indiana winter temperatures and must be taken out of the ground. So if you have it doesn't handle winter temperatures, you have to remove it, something to that effect.
Won't overwinter.
Yep, won't overwinter. Nice simple way to say it.
Gotta go to the store.
Yep. Number 15. So we're talking about when should soil be prepared for flower gardening? The preceding season or at least 2 months in advance to allow amendments to stabilize. Okay, so we're talking preceding season or 2 months in advance. All right, 16. Phosphorus is important. Next year's blooms depends on strong bulb or root development, which is encouraged. So that's why you need phosphorus to promote the blooms. Yep. Or on strong bulb or root development. Number 17. The answer is in the spring, just before or as growth begins.
Say it again.
In the spring, just before or as growth begins. Okay. 18. So we're talking about the bulb foliage until it dies down naturally, or 1 month. All right, 19. Spray or dust with a general purpose fungicide and insecticide. So you do that before you store them for the winter.
So you could clean up and discard diseased or undersized plants.
and make sure that you treat them, do like a treatment on them. Because if you store them in a cool spot, that fungus is going to grow.
Oh, treatment, okay.
Treat with a fungicide and an insecticide, a general purpose one. If you've got a ball that's got a little bit of fungus on it, you stick it down in the basement where it's cool and moist,
Okay,
it's done for.
okay.
All right, last question. You're fertilizing it, so immediately following the bloom period. So when should bulb plant fertilization be done for an established planting? Immediately following the bloom period. So once it's done. Okay, so that's your quiz. We'll get the answers up online for everybody. Obviously, we missed last week. Mother Nature was very, very mean and dumped a lot of snow on us. So, we canceled it due to the fact that none of us could get out, school was canceled and everything else. I sent out an email, because I had talked to Richard to see, I was gonna try to keep it on Monday night. Unfortunately, Richard couldn't get another Monday night in. So the only day he could really come back down to teach is Wednesday, March 4th. So next week, 2 classes. Same time, same place, just do Monday and Wednesday. So, make sure you mark that, don't forget. I know there's about a handful of you that said I really can't, and that's okay. We'll make amendments to it, the video will go up online, it'll be okay. So, just make a note of that. Do you guys have questions before I go into the projects section of things? Oh, I should mention one of the things, I've got a whole bunch of them in my hand. Whatever that second Saturday is in March, is that the 14th?
Yeah.
14th? Oh, good, because I think I told somebody else the wrong date today when I entered an email. My bad. Seek review and communication. You guys have really only dealt with me as the A&R educator. Melissa Merida, who's our county director, is also 4-H. She does a program called, it's technically the Disney Way, but it's about doing good communication. How do we build that among organizations, provide good customer service? I have some flyers, they'll be out during the break. You're more than welcome to attend. It's an all-day thing from 9 to 3. I'll feed you. You just have to pre-register with me to tell me that you're coming so I make sure I have enough food for everybody. This is open to both the intern class and the other master gardeners. So several of them are very excited about coming. It's a chance for us to kind of get everybody in the same room, not just I have you guys on Monday nights and I see them once a month. I'm getting everybody in the same room. So it's good. I will tell you, she will probably make you wear Mickey Mouse ears, but that's part of it, is to take you kind of out of your comfort zone a little bit. I read the book that it's based on. It's a very good book. So I encourage you to let me know if you're coming or not. These will be out in the hallway. 9 to 3. But I feed you. I almost always feed my people.
What day is it?
It's a Saturday, the second Saturday in March, the 14th, with a snow date of the 21st. But hopefully Mother Nature got it all out of her system, and hopefully, yeah, it's all good. All right, project books. You have them out. Unfortunately, 2 of the project chairs couldn't be here tonight due to health and the weather. But the Jeffersonville Optimist Club is one of the projects that we have. And Millie sent me a little email so that I could tell you guys about it. So Millie Crockett and then Karen Bohannon are co-chairs of this project. So she says we maintain the landscaping around it. As I understand it, it was essentially done several years ago. Karen has the blueprints of it. So if you ever wanted to see that, Karen has the original plans for it. We mostly try to adhere to that with just a few changes for ease of maintenance. It is a fairly large area. We need master gardener helpers at the Optimist. As the Optimist is an aging population, and we cannot count on them for much assistance. There's only one who comes on a regular basis. We work on Monday mornings, usually around 9 a.m. Karen is very skilled in landscaping, and I have learned a lot from her. Right now, we have Karen and her husband Don, which he's one that he doesn't never took the Master Gardener training, but he helps so much that we just kind of filter him in. Tony Fetz, Bob Crawls, which is an Optimist member, and then Frank, which is Millie's husband, and that's all that help with that project. So they would really like some other help if you live near the Jeffersonville area and wanted to help with the Optimist Club. They would really appreciate if you can help with that. I know that they've got some struggles that they're trying to figure out how to discourage the youth from using the plants as a landing zone when they're doing their bikes and stuff. So they're open to new ideas of some help and things like that. So
Where is
that's,
it located?
huh?
It's on Potter's Lane, that's Jeff Hopkins.
I have no idea, I've never been there.
It's off the
Springdale.
It's off Springdale.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. I stay away from Jeffersonville right now until they finish the construction because I don't want to get lost. So, you guys have other questions about that project real quick before we turn over to another project? Colleen, I think you're up for SIPs. Alright. So, Colleen used to be my program assistant, and then after about 9 months, she's like, I'm retiring.
Okay, enough.
Just FYI.
Yeah, I used to be very involved in the Master Gardener training program. I kind of miss it. Great to see 50 new faces. Southern Indiana Botanical Society was established in 1994 by a group of very spirited-minded, garden-loving people in this community. One of the original founders was a guy named Roy Hemmler, who used to be the agriculture and natural resources educator like Gina is now. And that's how we got associated with the Extension Office, just so this makes some sense to you guys. But since 1994, we have gardens kind of established mostly in Mount St. Francis and Floyd's Knobs. We had some plans to establish a big botanical garden over in Jeffersonville and Heron Park that we just couldn't really make happen. And then we also have a garden in Sellersburg at the Township Park. And I think actually it's just a little entrance garden, but I think it's one of the loveliest ones that we have, especially in the fall. So give you an overview of some of the gardens that we have besides that. At Mount St. Francis, we actually have a 99-year lease with the Wildlife Sanctuary at the Mount. We have a couple of gardens, or several gardens established there. One is our Garden of Remembrance, and that provides a couple of opportunities. The benches you see can be bought, if you will, and have a plaque put on them if you wanted to honor somebody or remember someone. We have engraved bricks available, and then we also offer the planting of large trees along a path that we have paved all the way down to the lake, Mount St. Francis. So that pretty much constitutes the Garden of Remembrance. We just recently, and I'm sorry I don't have a better picture, but I don't have to show, but we recently planted our entrance garden at Mount St. Francis with only plants that have won awards from the Theodore Klein award-winning plant group, which is basically the Kentucky Nurserymen Association. Each year they pick out a perennial, a shrub and or a tree that has been proven to work really well in our area, and they therefore awarded the Theodore Klein Award. Theodore Klein was a nurseryman. I don't know if you guys know about him or not, but he was Udell Gardens in Louisville, if you guys are familiar with that. That is Theodore Klein's property. So once he passed away, the family kind of donated it to the community. Udell became a reality and now is an excellent, excellent garden. But anyway, we planted the entrance garden with nothing but Theodore Klein award-winning plants and dedicated it last fall. The gentleman, the taller gentleman in the beard on the left is Theodore Klein's son. And so we invited him to the dedication party. Hopefully we'll see what that garden looks like this spring. Hopefully things survive this winter. At Mount St. Francis, we also have a native prairie. We took an old abandoned field, about an acre, and worked with Margaret Shea of Drop Seed Nursery and established that as a native prairie. And it's coming along pretty nice. It's looking good. And it's one of those that's maintenance-free. The only thing we do is mow the edges. We also mow paths through the prairie so people can get a sense of what's in there and what it looks like. Walk through one. On the paved path that I mentioned earlier that goes all the way down to the lake, we also established a native woodland wildflower garden and a seeding area. And that's been there for quite a few years now, and it's really filling out with Virginia bluebells and trillium and Dutchman's breeches and all the wonderful native plants that you find blooming in the spring in the woods. Other things that Southern Indiana Botanical Society is involved in monthly meetings, much like the Master Gardeners. We invite people to come and talk about horticulture-related events, or we go on garden tours, garden trips, do all sorts of interesting things. And we also, we have 2 annual events. The first of which, this is one over there, and that's in May, and that's our annual kitchen picnic and auction. We ask people to donate items, and then we have an auctioneer come and auction it off, and that way we raise funds. Then our other fundraiser opportunity is each fall in September, the second Saturday after Labor Day, and that's our annual plant and yard sale. And again, we ask people to donate items. We're trying to expand it into more plant material than we have in the past, but it's a fun project. Another event that we've been involved in for the last 2 years is a collaboration with the Southern Indiana Arts Council and having a monarch celebration, and we purchased and released 250 monarchs that day, and it's a real fun opportunity, great for the kids. And we use our fundraisers to support being able to do things like that. Things that I forgot to put up there, we do have a quarterly newsletter. We also have a website, very long, but it's very easy. It's www.southernIndianaBotanicalSociety.org. We are also on Facebook. There's more. Oh, the first night that you guys came, your first class, you should have received, and Gina, I don't know, it's a big piece of paper, a little piece of
And
paper.
it's a half sheet.
Half sheet. It gives you all a discount membership, it says for this year, for being a Master Gardener intern.
It was in the very back, and there's slip cover.
Instead of the usual $25 for an individual, it's only 10. And that is good through the remainder of this year, so we have a lot of people who join. There are no volunteer hours required in membership, unlike Sunnyside Master Gardeners. However, we are always looking for volunteers. We need help maintaining our website. We need help maintaining Facebook. We could use help with the newsletter, maintaining the gardens, being involved in the yard sale, and lots and lots of different opportunities.
Bless you.
Yeah, bless you. And all of those hours that you spend with us count towards your Master Gardener training hours, volunteer hours. Okay, I think that's it. Any questions?
Any particular days that you work?
You know, I hate to tell you, they're more organized in the Sellersburg Garden than we are at Mount St. Francis, but we plan to change that this year and at least have scheduled times when people can just show up, so you're not working by yourself.
Silver Creek is down there.
Oh, is it? Well, I can put you in touch with the lady who organizes that, and I think they do have a very established schedule when spring's going, or past spring. Okay, so just holler and come around. Okay, all right.
You
Yes.
already had the dates for the event you were talking about that had the butterflies.
I think it's August 18th. It's definitely a Saturday, and I haven't looked on the calendar to make sure that's a Saturday yet, but that's what it should be.
August 18th.
And we will have information on our website as soon as we have it available. You can also go on the Southern Indiana Arts Council's website, and they should have it as well. But I'm not sure. It's in August. I'm not working on that right now. Our president, Mary Lou, is. Which also, by the way, a lot of the members of the Southern Indiana Botanical Society are also Master Gardeners.
Don't y'all visit somebody
We do, but it moves around all the time. The last time was here. Gina did, Gardening with Arthritis, this coming Thursday. You guys are invited. I'm glad you brought it up. It will be at Walnut Ridge, even though they're not open right now. They will be open for 6 members and guests, and then we'll be talking about new and old perennials to use in the garden. In March, I should know this. I knew it earlier today. We live in March. Oh, our Gardens of the World. And Steele Blau, Bob Wilbur, who are both on our board, and maybe others will be doing presentations about different gardens they have visited around the world. Then in April, we'll have another very special event. We'll be here, and I do know the date on that. That's April 30th. And Brian Volker from the Louisville's Waterfront Botanical Gardens. He's coming to give us a presentation of the plants, the actual landscape plants that they have for those gardens. And that should be very interesting. And beyond April, I don't remember. May, we'll have our picnic and auction.
So what I forgot to mention is that I sit on that board too.
Yeah, Gina's involved in that too. Well, wear a lot of hats around here.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
anything else?
Gina, what time this Thursday at Walnut Ridge?
7 o'clock. And you just come. No reservations or anything, to show up. We'd be happy to have you.
PM, right?
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Yeah, 7 p.m.
7 p.m.
Yep.
And you do not have, we would love for you to be a member, but you do not have to be a member to come, and you can bring family guests. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
I want that.
Thank you.
Okay, there is one other project that we're going to talk about real briefly tonight. It's the newsletter. You all have gotten at least, you should have seen 2 of them now, unless you get a paper copy. But Kim, over there in hiding, is our newsletter person. So she is always looking for someone to write articles. Maybe you've read a book that you want the people to know about, that maybe you thought it was a decent book, but it was lacking in this or whatever. So you can always talk with Kim to see if you can help her kind of get some stuff in on the newsletter. So am I missing anything, Kim?
So,
Okay. It's a pretty low-key event, so unless, of course, you those that are supposed to contribute to it miss their deadline. Oops. It happens on occasion.
You said we should have gotten 2.
The second one just went out within the last 48 hours. So either email or it just went in the mail today.
I don't remember seeing them call.
I don't recall that.
Okay, this afternoon. Remember, I'm the one that's using my email like every 5 seconds on my phone, so time perception's a little different for me. Okay, you all have your handouts for tonight?
Yep.
Okay, so tonight your speaker is Brian McGowan. He is one of our wildlife specialists. Are there, Brian, how many wildlife specialists do you have? I don't know.
2, I guess. Well, now we got 3 now.
Okay. Okay, so Brian hangs out in Brookville, and that's where he's stationed out of. He actually worked with me on the Master Naturalist program and came down and taught wildlife. So he's got a couple different presentations for you. So we're gonna let him take it away, because I do get a lot of questions about the deer and whatnot. So maybe he can answer some of them before I get there.
All right, thank you, Gina.
Should I turn it on? Okay, there we go.
Okay, well, good evening. It's good to be here.
Good.
My name is Brian McGowan, so I've been a wildlife specialist at Purdue for going over 16 years now, so time flies. That's right. So Gina asked me to talk a little bit about dealing with wildlife problems, and then also a little bit on developing wildlife habitat. So I'm going to start with the bad stuff first, and then with the good stuff. So we run short of time. The good stuff is just do the opposite of what I tell you to do. Okay, so as people who garden and plant things, you're kind of setting yourself up for some conflicts. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of trying to look at some problem areas and things like that around the home and things like that. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about just a general strategy of how to deal with wildlife problems, talk a little bit about laws and regulations, and then I'll get into specifics on different species, okay? So I don't have time to cover everything tonight in terms of species, but if you have problems or questions, I'll try and address those at the end, okay? So sometimes we just do things to kind of invite wildlife, but just some problem areas around the home to think about are under porches, under sheds, things like that. These are really attractive areas for anything from rabbits to skunks to possums to cats, okay? So anything like this, if you've got issues with wildlife, again, because of things you've planted or you just have around, excluding that with a woven wire, welded wire, something like that, works very well. A lot of work, okay? A lot of work from that standpoint. So this is a good shot of hardware cloth. Hardware cloth is kind of the standard. Galvanized hardware cloth is what we use to exclude wildlife in many instances. And so this is actually under a screen deck. That's a second level. It's on a hillside, you know, so the first level becomes a second level. And so this is put up there to exclude things, mostly birds. We find that attractive in terms of access. Other things would have difficulty climbing up where it was at from that standpoint. Garage doors are one of the worst places, okay? And so over time, sometimes the concrete will sag right in the middle of the door, and so you'll get a gap there. Sometimes changing that rubber gasket, this one's painted on there, can help alleviate that. In this particular instance, and I know because this was my house, the previous owner, it wasn't me, okay, it was not me, cut this along the side there, presumably because water would pool up there, so there's probably some rotting issues, so he cut it, okay? Solved the rotting issue because that's concrete right there. The problem is, a nice little gap.
Oh, yeah. Big deal.
All this thing, these don't work on the screens, you see that? Okay, got a nice little gap. And I've always got actually Carolina wrens going in there, but this is perfect access for mice, for snakes, lizards, skinks, common lizard that we have. And so for some people that would be problematic. So if it really bothered me that much, I would do something about it. You'll find I'm kind of a lazy wildlife biologist, okay? Vents, vent coverings, big access point for animals. This actually has, you can barely see that lip of the cover that's supposed to kind of blow open when the dryer vent is on, and then it shuts down, okay? A lot of times that gets stuck, and I just happened to take a picture and look at it, and that's what it was. And so, especially weather like this, nice little warm crevice, birds just love that, okay? And so they can cause problems. Build stuff in there, clog the vent, can be a fire hazard. That's why I always mention about vent covers. If I would do something about this, you might say, well, Brian, you told me this stuff works really well. Okay, so I'm gonna take some of that and I'm gonna put it over that covering, okay? That's a no-no. Okay, you never do that because even though that wire is real skinny, doesn't take up much area, you add up all those little wires,
Yep.
and what you're doing is you're reducing the functional size of that opening, so you're reducing airflow. Okay, that's bad. Okay, that's another fire hazard. So any type of a good vent cover that's going to cover the whole thing is going to come out, and so it's going to be kind of a cube or something like that. Okay, same thing with a chimney cap, right? It comes out of the chimney and it's kind of, so you're not excluding the reducing the functional opening of that excluded. There you go, okay? So all the holes on all four sides of that chimney cap is going to exceed the area of that square opening of that fire. So if you don't have a chimney cap, that's always a good one. Raccoons, that's probably the biggest problem with chimneys from that standpoint. Old buildings, sheds, things like that. This is a breeding ground for raccoons, cats, and things. Want to avoid that. If I'm developing wildlife habitat, one of the things, an easy thing to do to benefit wildlife is make brush piles. Brush piles can benefit things like songbirds. If it's loose enough, you'll have songbirds, particularly this time of year, roosting in it overnight. Rabbits love these kinds of things. But if you've got issues with things, especially something like a skunk, if you've got skunks around, you build brush piles. Skunks like brush piles, okay? So you're kind of inviting problems regarding that, okay? So that's just kind of some basic kind of problem areas that I see around homes. There's more fascia boards on the sides of the house. That's a kind of a problem area, but we won't get into that. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do. Essentially, there's kind of 4 tools in our toolbox. Behavior modification is one. So these are things like visual deterrence, sound deterrence. I'm going to trip over this cord eventually. I like to walk around. Things to scare animals. That's what we do. Repellents. Those all kind of count into this category. You picked the wrong seat tonight.
That's okay.
Okay. I always bring this. This is a good one here. So this is most of these by themselves are relatively ineffective. Okay, if some of these things have some potency to them, generally speaking, they'll move really easily and they're reflective, so they'll catch light. So you can see if this is in the wind, it's going to catch light, and that has more of an effect on animals than things that don't. Like the I didn't bring it, I think I left it in the truck. The 5-eye balloon or something like that you put up, the fake owl. Okay. Those things really lose potency over time. These do
I
too.
spelled that out of my office. I spelled that flash tape out of my office.
It's called Mylar tape, M-Y-L-A-R, okay? if you don't, the nice thing I like about this is when I run out of ribbon at Christmas, I can use this and so, yeah. It's, you know, $8 to $10 a roll. I don't know, what do you sell it?
5 and 7.
See, she's a bargain. Okay,
So
there
I've
you
got
go.
2 different sizes.
Right, exactly. So generally speaking, so birds, so things that are very visual are really good for birds, and also cats are very visual animals, okay? This is another bird one right here. It's called the Birds Away Attack Spider. I like this one too. So, you know, woodpeckers start packing and yeah, I actually used to make fun of this, but I had a person who does nuisance wildlife control for a business, that's his job, and he claims they actually work fairly well. The thing I always liked about this is the concept. You're not just hanging something up. I turned it off, so you want to, here, you can turn it back on. You're not hanging something up and just kind of leaving it. It's a certain behavior, in this case is the woodpecker pecking on the house, is an illicit kind of response, okay? So again, those types of things are generally more effective. Most of them, not so much. Again, rarely work by themselves. Brief stimulus, changed and used with other tools. The thing I liken it to is, you know, we're all creatures of habit, right? You go the same way to the store or the church, or you drop your kids off to school. But then, say, a billboard changes or something else happens and it really catches your eye, okay? Billboards always catch my eye. But after a while, it's just background noise. You don't pay any mind to it. It becomes just the natural environment, okay? Same thing with these kinds of things. They might catch their eye for a little bit. They might change their behavior, but they're eventually figure out this, you know, that piece of tape isn't going to eat up that kind of thing. So you get the idea, okay? Repellents, a lot of people like repellents, okay? Maybe that's just the culture we live in. Again, you can have some pretty good short-term benefits, particularly for gardens and things like that, protecting small areas. That can be very effective. There's been a lot of research done looking at repellents, okay? A lot of mixed results, okay? A lot of different types and things like that. But essentially the rule of thumb is you're never going to have 100% success. In fact, if you have 50% success, you're probably doing okay. Okay, so in other words, half the stuff gets some type of damage and half of it doesn't. The key to it is to do it before damage occurs and do it on a somewhat regular basis. A good rule of thumb is every 4 weeks or so, okay? That is going to change though. For example, with tulips, okay, you got to spray tulips when they're first coming out of the ground like this because deer love tulips, okay? You got to spray them as the leaves grow and get bigger, okay? Okay, that stuff just doesn't spread on them as they grow. When the flower heads start to develop, you know, before they open, you guys probably know the terminology more. I'm not a botanist, I'm just a wildlife person, okay? You know, you got to spray then, okay? So you kind of, it's almost, you know, you kind of got to get burned a couple times to figure out when the key points are. But when you do that, you're generally going to have pretty good success, okay? Some things like that, they don't need to be sprayed, okay? The deer really don't do nothing really. I'm not sure why. Probably some kind of a chemical in there that makes them not very palatable, those kind of things. Remember, repellents are pesticides. And so, have you had a talk on pesticides and all that kind of
Not
stuff?
yet. They're going to have Fred in a couple weeks.
Oh, good. Thank you. Whenever I give a talk, I always say, don't put me on after Fred.
No, you're ahead of us. Okay.
So that's good. I appreciate that. Just remember some things. The purpose. This kind of happened with some of the geese repellents that came out originally. There was one that was a great flavor repellent, and it was a taste repellent. So it wasn't an area repellent where geese aren't supposed to be in the area. So people would spray their lawn, and geese would still be out there. They thought, well, the stuff didn't work. Okay, well, it doesn't mean they can't be out there. They're just probably not eating the grass that you spray. And so kind of know what's going on. Okay. Mothballs is probably the biggest one that you see. I'll still see information on the internet suggesting folks use mothballs to try and limit access to wildlife. That's a no-no, okay? Remember the things about these kinds of things. If they really work for that purpose, a company would go through and get it labeled and make a lot of money, okay? So things are labeled because one, they work, okay, and two, that they're safe. And safe for you and safe for the animal, okay, and other animals, non-targets, those kinds of things. So just kind of think about that from that standpoint.
What's bad about mothballs?
Well, the active ingredient in them is a carcinogen, okay? So that's naphthalene. They're flammable, and it's just, you know, I'm not a chemist or anything like that, but when I first got into this line of work, Judy Love, who's the State Director of Wildlife Services, she said that there's a lawsuit. It was actually with Extension, it wasn't in Purdue, though, it was in another state, maybe Texas, I think that's where she was from, where someone was saying, well, I got wildlife in my attic, I don't know what to do, and the person who answered the phone said, well, just put some mothballs up in their attic and you'll be okay. Well, they put a bunch of mothballs in the attic and they got sick, okay? So, you know, they're meant for very close, reduced spaces, used the way that they're labeled, okay? They may very well deter wildlife, right? But not something that's labeled for. Exclusion. So we're actually going to physically exclude animals. I showed you a couple of examples of that with the hardware cloth and those types of things. Things to think about, and again, we'll go through specific examples later on, but does it need to be permanent or not? Okay, some things maybe it's just temporary. Okay, I got an oak seedling in my backyard. I'm on number 2. See, I'm cheap, so I don't buy the pot, you know, I don't do that. I wait for the squirrels to plant my neighbors, and then I dig it up and I plant it somewhere else. But the first time I did that, the deer got it. So now I finally got smart and listened to my own advice, and so I got a big circular woven wire exclosure on it. Okay, pretty big, 7 foot high. Not the most attractive thing, but eventually that oak's going to get big enough where I can remove that. And so that's something to think about. Some things that just may be during certain times of the year. Maybe there's a month, you know, for example, deer, when they damage woody stuff, it's usually this time of year because there's not other things around. Okay, so that's kind of the way to think about it. Obviously, if you're going to plant a vegetable garden, you got to have the fence up first. Don't wait. That's kind of an important thing. There's specific construction things to think about in terms of how you build it, the types of materials, and we'll touch on those as we go. I just want to kind of plant that seed as something to kind of think about. The third tool is habitat alteration. So this one's a little more permanent than all of our others. You kind of got to get to kind of the what's causing that species to be there. So if you think about it, and particularly an animal is going to be attracted to your property because you've got the food or cover or water, some kind of an attractant, and so you're trying to modify that to make it less attractive. It could be something simple as just removing that brush pile I talked about. Don't put your garbage out on the street until early in that morning. Reduce mulch thickness. I heard the thing about mulch. Okay, I think that's a big common problem, especially with things like voles. Okay, so you've got a nice thick mulch bed there, where the voles can tunnel underneath it, where they're protected above from predators, and then they can girdle your shrubs and thin bark trees at will without being exposed. And so something like that can really help with those. So habitat alteration. And then the last one is population management. Essentially, you're going to kill or remove an animal. Okay? And so this is where you have to know the law, which I'll review here in a little bit from that standpoint. But the thing you got to think about, so is this a temporary solution, right? So is it, or is it something more permanent? If an animal's causing damage, you take it out, kill it or whatever, problem solved, right? No, why not? Another one moves in, yep. So if you think about it, most, not all, but most of the species we have issues with in terms of damage and nuisance are species that are very common, okay? And so if you have the conditions that made it attractive to that raccoon, the cousin and niece and all of them, if the same conditions are there, they're going to move in. And so animals will do that. And so while this a lot of times is a necessary part of the plan, okay, if you got animals in a structure, for example, you got to get rid of them, or if they're really causing a lot of damage to your prized flowers, you got to do something, right? But in the long term, it's not the only thing to do. Trapping, most of us, if you're going to do something with animals, you're going to use some type of a trap. Time of year can be something of an issue. For example, with rabbits, okay, if you trap rabbits right now, they're really easy to trap, okay, because you can put stuff in there that they just don't have available to them. And so any kind of fear they have or hesitation about going inside that box trap is going to be overcome by the desire to eat whatever's in that trap. Now you try and trap them in the spring or summer, different story, okay, very, very hard to trap. And unfortunately, that's the time when they do a lot of their damage. how the trap is important as well, how it's set. So most folks, if you're going to set some type of trap, you're going to set a box trap. I won't move around the camera. We'll make them work tonight. Okay. So a
And I do
typical
rent
box
those,
trap.
By the way, I have 2 that I rent out.
There you go. See, she's on.
Except I can't guarantee the effectiveness of one because someone caught a skunk in it. So,
Actually, skunk odor is very attractive, and so if you're trapping animals, you know, we think of food, okay, because that's how we think. We're always thinking of something to eat, right? But actually, there's other things you can use. Curiosity lures would be one, and so animals are curious about a lot of things, and so that smell of a skunk, depending on what you're trapping, that smell of a skunk can actually be very, very attractive from that standpoint. So, typical box trap. This is a one that probably, if you bought it, it'd probably go for about $80 or $90, and so it's pretty large. I don't know what size that you have.
I have 2. I have a raccoon one and I have one for groundhogs.
Right, and so this one would be one that I would use for raccoons, and actually would work for groundhogs too. You can use smaller traps in this, but I don't like that because if you get a big boar raccoon in them, they can really mess them up from that standpoint. A couple of features I like about this is the lever is on the outside. Most traps have that on the inside, and that's, again, you get that big animal in there. You can really bend that. Once you bend that lever, you can't bend it back to where it works right. But the most important thing is just kind of where you set it and how you set it. And so if you're going to set a trap, let's just say you got a groundhog problem. Where are you going to set that trap at? Any ideas? Anybody ever set a groundhog trap?
Where your problem is.
Where your problem is? You can do that.
Where he comes to eat.
Where he comes to eat. Okay. Any other ideas?
Near his
Put
home.
it near the hole.
You can do near the hole. You don't want to do it right at the hole. Yep. Okay. That groundhog sticks its head out, sees one of these staring at their face. Seriously, they just they don't really like it. So if you put it a few feet away, kind of a thing, that's fine. But all those are right. Okay. So generally, where you see the animal, where they're doing damage. Okay, some things like groundhogs, they kind of have a regular path. Raccoons are the same, so you can do that. Absolutely. Most people, when they set the trap, I'm not going to sit on the plaster. Well, all right. Set it down, just kind of walk away, right? Okay, you don't want to do that because ground is generally uneven. Okay, and so if that trap wobbles just a little bit, animal's going to be less likely to go in. And so when I'm setting the trap, I'm going to ride it like a horse, and I'm going to be on the ground, okay? But I'm sitting on it, really working it in there. So when you touch it, it's really stable, okay? That's really, really important, okay? The problem with doing that is sometimes you can get stuff underneath the pan, okay? That pan's got to go down in order for the trap to fire. And so you always kind of test it. You can stick your hand in there and kind of do it like that. Okay. With some things you're going to pre-bait. Okay. So figure this out here. Get that one back. This thing's my demo trap, so it gets thrown in the truck a lot. Okay. So if I'm going to pre-bait it, I can stick like a piece of rebar or just zip tie the thing. There's a little hole there. I can zip tie it open. So basically, it doesn't trap, doesn't trigger when they go in there. And so, like for example, rabbits and squirrels too. Obviously, I'm using a smaller trap if I'm trapping a tree squirrel. But I'll put a little bait on the outside, maybe just a little bit on the inside. Okay, you're not feeding them for a week, just a little bit to kind of get them accustomed. Once you actually see them, like okay, they're there, kind of doing it. Usually takes 2 or 3 days, and then you can just remove the bar or whatever, and then it's live from that standpoint.
And what do you recommend them doing? I get the question of, well, I've trapped it now. What do I do? Where do I take it? Or
Good question. What's legal?
You take it to Kentucky.
Release them in the same county.
yeah.
Yes. So in Indiana, you have to release them in the county of capture. That's right. How long can you hold it for?
I don't remember reading that.
24 hours.
Less than 24 hours. Yep, less than 24 hours. That's
And
right.
it also said if you relocate animals, they're not used to where they're at, so they may not find food and may die anyway.
Yes, and so I heard permission over here, that's important. Even if it's public ground, by law, you're supposed to obtain permission before you release it. How many people do that, I don't know. So, those are the three things. Within the county, permission, and you can't hold it less than 24 hours. Yes?
I've used a trap like that a couple of times. The first time or two that I used it, I got a raccoon in there and they were pretty frisky, and so he turned over and then got out.
Yep.
And so I use a fairly long metal rod with a hook on the top of it and set the trap down, and then just put the rod right down through there so that they can't work it over and turn it over.
Right. You can do that, or like, now, of course I don't have any, but like, imagine this is rebar or whatever, and I'll take it and put a couple couple in on each side, that way it goes. You get a skunk in there, and they'll pull a bunch of stuff in there, but they generally don't roll it, but raccoons can really roll a trap. And so if you're putting this by where they're at, and by where they're at is by stuff you really care about, then you want to really do that, okay? If I'm trapping a raccoon on a roof, okay, so if you got one in the attic, that's actually where you're going to trap it, I will screw this down to a piece of plywood and put that on the roof, so that way they're not ripping up shingles and things from in the trap. Yep. So, not really too applicable maybe for this class here, but works pretty good. Baits, raccoons like sweet stuff, marshmallow cream, marshmallow, grape jelly, donuts, those kinds of things. If I'm treating groundhogs, I generally use apple. Okay, so I'll take a half an apple and I'm grating cheese back here so it gets all mushy. You know, maybe put on the dirt out here, throw it in there, and I'm good to go. Okay. If the apple doesn't work, I use cantaloupe. One of those will definitely work. But they're generally pretty easy to trap. Rabbits, vegetables, things like that. Apple pieces sometimes work for them too. The only other thing you have to do with rabbits sometimes is cover the ground with dirt. I guess in this class it'd be soil. Yeah, right. And that seems to help quite a bit. The other thing I do with traps is I cover them. Okay, so in the summertime I'll use cardboard and I'll just wire it on there. Take a piece of wire, I'll have 2 loops. In the wintertime, occasionally I'll use tar paper, like roofing paper. You don't use that in the summertime because it kind of cooks them. Cardboard breathes a little better. The thing I like about that is, one, it's kind of enclosed, so that I think the animal's just kind of more comfortable if I kind of want to humanize it there from that standpoint. But the other thing too is like people, neighbors, things like that, they can't tell if something's in there. That's pretty good. So sometimes people like to mess with stuff. So that's it. I guess the last thing is, what do you if you catch a skunk? What do you do?
I know.
Don't call me.
I caught a whole family, 3 little babies and a mama.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
I caught them in a trap, little
Yep.
trap with